Marcus Delgado stood in his backyard, sweat dripping down his face as he surveyed the above-ground pool that had been the centerpiece of his modest property for the past 5 summers. The once pristine blue vinyl was now faded and patched in multiple places, and the filter system had given up the ghost 3 weeks ago. With August's brutal heat bearing down and 3 children begging for relief, he finally made the difficult decision. The pool had to go. "You sure about this, honey?" His wife Elena called from the patio, where she was assembling a pitcher of lemonade. "The kids are going to be devastated." Marcus wiped his brow with the back of his hand and nodded grimly. "We've already ordered the new one. It'll be here in 2 weeks. Besides, this thing's a death trap now. Better to have no pool than one that might collapse with the kids in it." What Marcus didn't say aloud was that they couldn't really afford the new pool. His hours at the auto shop had been cut back, and Elena's part-time accounting work barely covered their existing bills. Both the temperatures consistently soaring above 95 degrees and the community pool closed for renovations, he put the entire purchase on credit. Some things were worth going into debt for, and his children's happiness was one of them. "Daddy, what are you doing?" His youngest, Sophia, appeared at his side, clutching her favorite inflatable unicorn floaty. At 6 years old, she had spent more time in the pool than out of it this summer. "We're getting a new pool, sweetie. A bigger, better one." He ruffled her hair, trying to sound enthusiastic. "But I like this one," she protested, her lower lip quivering dangerously. Before Marcus could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me. What exactly do you think you're doing?" Marcus turned to see their next-door neighbor, Diane Whitfield, peering over the fence. In the 3 years since the Delgados had moved into the neighborhood, Diane had never once smiled at them. Her immaculately maintained Victorian home and pristine lawn stood in stark contrast to the Delgados' more lived-in property. "Afternoon, Diane," Marcus said, trying to keep his tone pleasant. "Just taking down our old pool. Getting a new one soon." Diane's heavily lined face pinched into a scowl. "You can't do that. That pool has been there since you moved in. It's part of the neighborhood aesthetic now." Marcus blinked, genuinely confused. "It's my pool, on my property." "You need permits to remove structures, you know," Diane said, her voice rising slightly. "And what about the water? Where do you plan to drain it? Into the storm sewers? That's against city ordinance." "I checked with the city. No permit needed for a temporary above-ground pool, and I'm draining it slowly into my own yard," Marcus replied, feeling his patience wearing thin. "Look, Diane, I appreciate your concern, but—" "This neighborhood has standards," Diane interrupted, her gaze sweeping dismissively over their modest ranch-style home. "I've worked hard to maintain property values here, and I won't have you turning this street into some kind of—" "Some kind of what exactly?" Elena had appeared beside Marcus, her arms crossed. Diane's lips thinned to a nearly invisible line. "I'm just saying there are proper ways to do things. And we're doing it properly," Marcus assured her. "Now if you'll excuse us, we have work to do." As Diane huffed and disappeared from view, Marcus and Elena exchanged weary glances. They had no idea that by sundown, 3 police cars would be parked in front of their home and their simple pool removal would become the talk of the entire neighborhood. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had drained half the pool's water into his backyard garden as planned. The August sun had already begun to evaporate much of it, turning the air humid and sticky. His 2 older children, Miguel and Lucia, had joined the effort, helping their father roll up the pool liner as sections emptied. "Dad, Mrs. Whitfield is watching us again," Miguel whispered, nodding subtly toward the fence. The 13-year-old had developed a sixth sense for their neighbor's surveillance. Marcus glanced over to see Diane pacing along her side of the fence, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly with her free hand. He sighed and returned to his work. Whatever drama she was stirring up wasn't his concern. Elena brought out sandwiches and lemonade around 3 o'clock, and the family took a break in what little shade their maple tree provided. Sophia had gotten over her initial disappointment and was now excitedly describing features she hoped would be in the new pool. "I want a slide and maybe those fountain things that shoot water up in the air," she exclaimed, spraying crumbs as she spoke. "The new pool is the same kind as this one," Major Elena gently reminded her, "but it won't have all those patches and tape." The peaceful family moment was shattered by the unmistakable sound of sirens approaching their street. At first, Marcus thought they must be passing through somewhere else. But when 2 police cruisers pulled up directly in front of their house, his stomach dropped. "What the hell?" he muttered, standing up and brushing crumbs from his shorts. A young officer and his older partner stepped out of the first car, while the third officer emerged from the second vehicle. They conferred briefly before approaching the Delgados' front gate. "Stay here," Marcus told his family, walking around the side of the house to meet the officers. The older officer, a weathered man with salt and pepper hair and nameplate reading Reynolds, spoke first. "Afternoon, sir. We've received a complaint about illegal demolition and water dumping at this address. Marcus blinked in disbelief. You're kidding, right? I'm afraid not, Reynolds replied, though a flicker of something, perhaps embarrassment, crossed his face. Someone reported that you're removing a structure without proper permits and illegally dumping chlorinated water into the storm system. Before Marcus could respond, the younger officer piped up, We'll need to see your demolition permit and water discharge authorization. Marcus ran a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. It's an above-ground pool that I bought at Walmart 5 years ago. There's no permit required to take it down. And I'm draining the water into my own yard, not the storm drains. Officer Reynolds pulled out a small notebook. Can I see some ID, please? As Marcus retrieved his wallet from inside, he noticed Diane Whitfield standing on her front porch, arms crossed in triumph. When she saw him looking, she quickly turned and went inside, but her message was clear. She had called the police. Elena had come around the side of the house, concern etched across her face. What's happening? She asked as their children peeked anxiously from behind her. Before Marcus could answer, a fourth person, a woman in business casual attire with a city ID badge around her neck, approached from a sedan that had just parked. I'm Teresa Guzman from City Code Enforcement, she announced, nodding to the officers. I got called about an emergency water violation. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. This is ridiculous. There's no emergency here. Officer Reynolds had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Ma'am, this gentleman is removing a pool and draining it into his yard. Teresa glanced at the backyard where the half-dismantled pool was clearly visible. She checked her tablet. At this address? Let me see. No permits on file. But she paused, tapping through several screens. Above-ground temporary pools under a certain size don't require removal permits in this zone. That's what I've been saying, Marcus said, relief flooding his voice. As for the water, Teresa continued, walking toward the backyard to inspect. As long as it's properly dechlorinated and not causing flooding to adjacent properties, there's no violation for draining into your own yard. The younger officer seemed disappointed, but Officer Reynolds nodded as if he'd expected this outcome. What none of them realized was that this confrontation was being filmed by Lucia from her upstairs bedroom window, a video that would soon become very important indeed. By early evening, news of the pool incident had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Marcus and Elena's phones buzzed constantly with text messages from neighbors asking what happened. Lucia's video, which she had shared with just a few friends, had somehow made its way through the neighborhood's group chats. Dad, my video has over 300 views already, Lucia announced, showing him her phone screen. The 14-year-old looked both alarmed and slightly thrilled by her unexpected viral moment. Marcus watched the footage with a sinking feeling. The video captured the scene perfectly. 3 police cars and a city vehicle parked outside their modest home. Officers questioning him while he stood shirtless and sweaty in his yard. Most damning of all, Diane Whitfield clearly visible on her porch, watching the scene unfold with obvious satisfaction before ducking inside when spotted. Great, he muttered. Now the whole neighborhood thinks we're criminals. Actually, Dad, Miguel said, scrolling through comments on his own phone, everyone's on our side. Nobody likes Mrs. Whitfield. Remember when she called animal control on the paddles because their cat walked through her yard? Elena placed a comforting hand on Marcus's shoulder. Let's finish the pool tomorrow. It's getting late, and we're all tired. Marcus nodded reluctantly. The remaining water would have to drain overnight, and they'd tackle the rest of the dismantling in the morning. After a quick dinner, the family retreated inside, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. Around 9 o'clock, just as the younger children were getting ready for bed, a knock sounded at their front door. Marcus opened it to find Ray Johnson, the neighborhood association president, standing on his porch alongside a woman Marcus recognized as Diane's friend from 2 doors down. Marcus, sorry to bother you so late, Ray said, looking genuinely apologetic. We saw what happened today. The whole association board is pretty upset about it. Marcus braced himself. The neighborhood association had never been particularly friendly to the Delgados, often sending notices about minor infractions like basketball hoops left in driveways or trash cans visible from the street. Look, Ray, I checked with the city before removing the pool. I wasn't breaking any rules. We know the woman Patricia something. Marcus couldn't remember her last name, interjected. That's not why we're here. Ray nodded. We're here because Diane has gone too far this time. She's been on a power trip ever since she joined the board last year, and frankly, we're tired of it. Marcus blinked in surprise. I don't understand. We've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night, Patricia explained. We're voting on whether to remove Diane from her position as head of the beautification committee. What she did today, calling the police without even speaking to you first, violates our association's good neighbor policy. And we were hoping, Ray added, that you might allow us to use Lucia's video at the meeting. We need evidence of Diane's behavior. Elena had appeared at Marcus's side, listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "The video shows our children and I'm not comfortable having it shown at an official meeting without our presence." "That's completely understandable," Ray said quickly. "We'd like to invite your whole family to attend, actually. Several neighbors want to express their support." As Ray and Patricia explained the details of the meeting, Marcus felt a strange mix of vindication and discomfort. He had never wanted to be the center of neighborhood drama. He just wanted to replace his worn-out pool for his kids. After the visitors left, Elena wrapped her arms around him. "You okay?" "I think so," Marcus replied, staring thoughtfully at the closed door. "I just don't understand people sometimes. Why would Diane care so much about our pool? Some people need to control everything around them," Elena said softly. "And when they can't, they lash out." Neither of them could have predicted what would happen at the neighborhood meeting the following night, nor how it would permanently change the dynamics of their quiet suburban street. The community center buzzed with an energy Marcus had never witnessed at a neighborhood association meeting. Usually these monthly gatherings attracted maybe 15 residents at most, typically the same faces each time. Tonight, the small meeting room was packed with over 60 people, many of whom Marcus recognized but had never spoken to beyond casual waves from driveways. "I had no idea this many people even lived in our neighborhood," Elena whispered as they found seats in the back. They'd left the children at home with Elena's sister, deciding that bringing them might escalate tensions unnecessarily. Ray Johnson called the meeting to order, his normally casual demeanor replaced with formal authority. Diane sat in the front row, ramrod straight, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun. She had arrived accompanied by 3 of her friends, older residents who had been in the neighborhood since its development 20 years ago. "Before we address the agenda items," Ray began, "I want to acknowledge the unusual attendance tonight and thank everyone for coming. This shows how much we all care about our community." The first 30 minutes proceeded with standard business, approving previous minutes, discussing the upcoming fall festival, and reviewing the quarterly budget. Marcus began to wonder if the pool incident would be addressed at all. Then Ray cleared his throat and changed tone. "Now we need to discuss a matter of community standards and neighborly conduct," he announced. "Many of you are aware of an incident that occurred yesterday involving the Delgado family and our beautification committee head, Diane Whitfield." A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus felt dozens of eyes briefly turn toward him and Elena. "Our association bylaws clearly state that neighbors should attempt to resolve conflicts directly before involving authorities," Ray continued. "They also state that board members are expected to exemplify our good neighbor policy." Diane stood up abruptly. "If we're going to discuss this, I have the right to present my side." Without waiting for permission, she strode to the front of the room. "What happened yesterday was simply a matter of upholding neighborhood standards," she declared, her voice crisp and confident. "The Delgados have been systematically degrading property values since they moved in. First with their unapproved vegetable garden in the front yard, then the children's basketball hoop, and now removing a structure without proper documentation." Marcus felt his face growing hot. The unapproved garden was 4 tomato plants that Elena grew in a small raised bed. The basketball hoop had been a Christmas gift from Miguel. "Furthermore," Diane continued, "I had genuine concerns about environmental damage from pool chemicals. I did try to speak with Mr. Delgado, but he dismissed my concerns." That was a blatant lie, and Marcus nearly stood to challenge it, but Elena's hand on his arm kept him seated. "I acted in the best interest of all homeowners," Diane concluded triumphantly. "If property values fall, we all suffer." A moment of uncomfortable silence followed before a woman in her 30s stood up from the middle of the room. Marcus recognized her as Alicia Freeman, a nurse who lived across the street. "I'd like to speak," she said firmly. Ray nodded, and Alicia made her way to the front. "I've lived here for 6 years, and in that time I've received 5 written complaints from the beautification committee, all for things like my kids' chalk drawings on our own driveway or Halloween decorations left up 2 days past November 1st. Several heads nodded in recognition. "But what happened yesterday crossed a line," Alicia continued. "I watched police cars surround a family's home, a family with young children, over a pool on their own property." She pulled out her phone. "I took screenshots of the neighborhood Facebook group from 2 years ago when Diane installed a hot tub without any permits. When Jeff Miller pointed this out, she removed him from the group." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Diane's face had gone from confident to furious. The difference in how Diane treats certain neighbors versus others is obvious to anyone who's been paying attention, Alicia concluded, her implication hanging in the air. What happened next would fundamentally change the neighborhood's power structure and transform the Delgados' place within their community, all because of a worn-out swimming pool and one neighbor's catastrophic overreach. The association meeting erupted into chaos after Alicia's revelation. Neighbors who had remained silent for years suddenly found their voices, sharing stories of run-ins with Diane and her beautification committee. The picture that emerged was one of selective enforcement and thinly veiled prejudice. She told me my wind chimes were ethnic-looking and against the aesthetic guidelines, said Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. My children's basketball hoop was a violation, but the Hendersons' professional-grade trampoline was apparently fine, added another resident. Ray struggled to maintain order as Diane's face grew increasingly flushed. Her three supporters looked uncomfortable, eyes fixed on the floor. I move that we vote immediately on Diane's removal from the board, called out Jeff Miller, the man who had been kicked out of the Facebook group. This has gone on long enough. Diane shot to her feet again. This is a witch hunt. You can't remove me based on hearsay and social media screenshots. Actually, Ray said quietly, holding up a copy of the association bylaws, we can. Section 7, paragraph 3 allows for removal of any board member who demonstrates a pattern of behavior inconsistent with our community values. I'd like to say something, if I may, Marcus said, standing for the first time. The room fell silent as he made his way to the front. He looked directly at Diane. I never wanted any of this. All I wanted was to replace a worn-out pool so my kids could swim safely. I've lived in this neighborhood for 3 years, and in that time I've tried to be a good neighbor. I keep my lawn cut, my house maintained, and my children respectful. Marcus took a deep breath. But no matter what I do, it never seems to be enough. The truth is, I'm tired. Tired of feeling like I have to prove I belong here. Tired of wondering if the next police visit will end differently because my son was playing his music too loud or because my daughter's quinceañera celebration had too many cars parked on the street. The room was utterly silent now. Yesterday, you didn't just call the police on my pool. You called them on my family. You made my children watch their father being questioned by officers on our own property. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Diane would meet his eyes. I don't want your removal from the board, Marcus continued, surprising everyone. What I want is for you, for all of us, to do better, to talk to each other, to remember that behind every so-called violation is a family just trying to live their lives. Alina had joined him at the front, tears gleaming in her eyes as she took his hand. If Diane is willing, Marcus concluded, I'd like to invite her to dinner at our home next week, to meet my family properly, to see that we want the same things for this neighborhood that she does, safety, beauty, and community. The silence that followed was profound. Ray looked stunned. Alicia was openly crying, and Diane, rigid, rule-abiding Diane, sat frozen in her chair, faced with the generosity she had never shown others. What happened in the next 3 minutes would transform Maple Creek Estates forever, creating ripples that extended far beyond a simple neighborhood dispute. All because one man chose grace when he could have demanded justice.